I always felt that the European Union was wrong. The chap on the phone goes, "Hello, is that Stephen Wolf?" I said, "Yes, it is." He said, "It's Nigel Farage." I said, and I thought it was my brother taking the mickey. The kind of woke ideology is to pretend that you're something you're not, just to try and get a vote in and push yourself up the ladder.
But how did that then lead on to you being interested in politics and your UKIP days?
Well, the politics was easy. Obviously, seeing poverty, seeing people that we grew up with, that makes you political. Of course, the reading does that. I did, and actually also being mixed race, with the Irish in me and the black in me and the Jewish and the Catholic in me, it all brings up all of those. And when I went to university, it's quite natural. I actually got involved with the Labour Party. I probably did actually in the year before I went to university and campaigned for the Labour Party. It's inevitable. That's what we would grow up to believe. The Labour Party was there to support the working class. And I thought, right, I'll go and do it. And at university, I got involved in the Labour movement there, but not so much. Really, they backed me when I tried to become president of Aberystwyth University. I didn't win. I won to someone who is a black lady who sang a song about South Africa, pretending she was from South Africa, when actually she was born somewhere in London. And that was what exposed me to the first element of what the kind of woke ideology is, to pretend that you're something you're not, just to try and get a vote in and push yourself up the ladder. I then went to London, still feeling I was slightly Labour-ish, and joined the Society of Black Lawyers, where I suddenly, and as a barrister, trying to become a barrister, I met lots of lefty Labourites who are now on the Labour benches, including our Prime Minister, who founded a set of chambers I applied to, and they rejected me, for probably not being woke enough, actually, at the time. But they did take on some of the people I knew in the Society of Black Lawyers. And I remember a couple of things transforming me after that particular moment. There was the rise of the Labour Party under Tony Blair, particularly Mandelson. And I got involved with a chap called Derek Draper, who became Mandelson's chief of staff. He was encouraging me to join the Labour Party. He said, and one day he sat down and said, "Stephen, you're perfect. You're mixed race. You're single parent. You come from Moss Side. You're born in Manchester. You're working class. Gee, you are definite cabinet material. We'll have you on telly." And it was all about image at that stage. And two or three things happened to me at that stage, turned me off the Labour Party. The first was Mandelson. I met Mandelson, and I was at a Fabian Society meeting, and it was very clear that they were saying whatever they wanted to get into power, but they were abusing Tony Benn. And Tony Benn was my first political book, Arguments of Socialism. I still have it, literally up there. And it was all talking about opposing the European Union, how corporatism is controlling the country, low wage, low economy, which we know we are in. And then they were going to impact child benefits. And he denied that they were going to do it. And of course they did it. And I thought, I don't like that. The second thing is immigration was beginning to have an impact, not hugely in the same way it is today. And it became very clear to me that Tony Blair, in his speeches, was opening the door to large-scale immigration, which, as you and I know, in our communities, that just pushed the wages down. It made it even more difficult to get work. And I thought, how can that be helping the working class in our country when you're doing that? So you're impacting benefits. You're bringing in people that can push down wages. And I think then I went to a Society of Black Lawyers, and who was it? It was Paul Boateng, who I think at the time was a minister in the government. He sat down and he said, we want to have a chat with you. And I said, well, I'm quarter caste. And he went, "Oh, no, you can't say that. In the Labour Party, you mustn't use phrases like that. There are certain phrases we have to stick to. Well, why don't you be a bit more expansive? Call yourself quadroon."
Quadroon.
So I went, it said it's French. I went, okay, so I can call myself not quarter caste because that's English, but I can call myself quarter caste in French. And that'll be all right for the Labour Party at the moment. And it became very clear that they really weren't about the working class. It was about power for themselves, and it was about a different agenda. So I dropped out. I went and did my job as a lawyer. I went off and did various other things. And then I always felt that the European Union was wrong. I watched the arguments. I worked in the City of London. I'd crawled up the ladder. I'd become influential in the hedge fund industry, chaired the Hedge Fund Lawyers Association, and we started to see European regulations, particularly one called the Alternative Investment Fund Management Directive. To most people, that doesn't mean anything, but what it did, it meant the European Union were controlling a big industry, hedge funds, and making us effectively lose business to French and German institutions or those in America, crushing things that we were doing something like 64 billion pounds in revenue to the country by it. And I thought I was opposing it. I did a speech one day, and it was funny, where I argued that whoever had drafted this particular directive clearly didn't know about hedge funds, clearly didn't know about financial services, and clearly didn't know enough about the law of fund management. And I would love to meet them and tell them. And the presenter said, well, you might get that soon enough. And unfortunately, it sat me at the table at lunch with a German young lawyer called Klaus Tollmann, who drafted it. Now, he was about 27. Intelligent and nice enough lad. But when I questioned him, I said, have you ever been in hedge funds, fund management? No. Where did you come from? The Bundesbank. So how can you draft legislation that you don't know anything about and never met or talked to people like ourselves? And he said it was a deal done by the commissioner of the European Union, who was Spanish, to get votes from the socialist left, particularly a Danish socialist who said he wanted to harm private equity funds and hedge funds. It needed to be done, and that is why I'm doing it. And it became very clear. This was about a man wanted to be the chairman of the commission, talking to socialists who had a beef, and therefore I'll destroy an industry not related to either of their countries. And then I was invited by a member of the House of Lords to attend an event to describe what I'd seen in the City of London in House of Commons. So I went, and there I met a huge number of people. Dan Hannan was there from the Conservatives. I remember trade union representatives, Bob Crow, his team were there from the left, and all of these opposing the European Union. So I had trade unionists, Conservative members, bankers, all these interested. And then a few days later, I got a telephone call whilst I was watching Spooked on a Sunday night. Do you remember Spooked?
I do.
I used to love that series. And the chap on the phone goes, hello, is that Stephen Wolf? I said, yes, it is. He said, it's Nigel Farage. I said, and I thought it was my brother taking the mickey.
Yes.
I said, oh, Mike, please put it away. Is that you? This is Nigel Farage on it. Oh, hello, Nigel. How are you? And he said, I would like to meet you. And would you be interested in joining my team as a spokesman for the City of London and talk about what's happening? And then I was invited in 2010 to go to Torquay by the chairman of the UKIP at the time. Not a member. I hadn't joined, but I just went to see. And of course, Nick, I was cautious. People had talked about these people being the party of racists in smart suits. So I talked to my family, and my mum, remember my mum saying to me, listen, Stephen, remember the press want an enemy, and they'll always criticize new people. You just go down there and see who they are, speak to them. And if these people are racists, you're not a member, you can walk away. But you make up your own decision. Don't listen to the press, because they'll always pervert it for their own particular slant and their own political masters. So I went in 2010. I met with Nigel. I gave a speech at the Torquay conference. And I met people who were landowners to working class people like myself. Black, white, men, women, young, old. Basically, the people of Britain. The United Kingdom, England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, ordinary citizens concerned about their country, its direction, passionate about change and wanting to see a difference. I didn't see racists there at all. Hope Not Hate were trying to engender some idea that they were full of racists. And of course, there's obviously going to be the odd one or two, who came out of the woodwork later on, but generally these were ordinary people, and that's what got me into UKIP. That's that telephone call, that meeting in the House of Lords, and but more than anything else, turning up at Torquay and meeting people like yourself, Nick, who were really exasperated and felt that there needed to be some fundamental change in this country that we could achieve by a new political party. Ordinary people, fed up and angry and wanting positive change. That's what I call patriots, people who believed in our nation.
I once got a phone call 10 years ago, and a gentleman, I forget his name now, a gentleman said, "Hi, my name is such a thing. I'm calling on behalf of Boris Johnson's policy unit," because he was Prime Minister at the time. "Would like to," I went, whoa, 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 whoa. Who's this? Who's this? "Oh, no, I just told you, Mr. Buckley, that I went, you're going to have to prove who you are. I'm not having a conversation with someone on the phone who tells me they're phoning up on behalf of the Prime Minister to speak to me." So he said, "I'll email you now, and you'll be able to tell from my email address that this is an official government email address." So he emailed me, and I phoned him back and went, "Right, I now believe who you are. Go on, let's have a conversation."
It is funny when you get a call like that. I mean, I'm sure that, if you're born in certain circles, a telephone call like that would have been absolutely natural. But at that time, I'm middle of spooks as well. I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is not quite what it was.
So then you joined UKIP, and that's when I remember you from. You joined UKIP. You were heavily involved. What were the highlights? I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. This nation owes UKIP a big thank you, because if it wasn't for UKIP, we never would have almost left the European Union. And I know Brexit up to now has been a failure, but that's not because Brexit's a failure. That's because the people in charge have never taken advantage of the fact that we've left the EU. Those advantages, those benefits are sat on the shelf. And one of these days in the near future, we're going to have a government that comes along and is willing to take those benefits and those advantages and to improve this country. So Brexit at the moment has been stalled as far as I'm concerned, but the benefits will come once we get politicians in the government who actually want the benefits of Brexit.
I couldn't agree more with you. I think that those people, the millions who campaigned for UKIP, those who founded it, those who funded it, those who supported it in days when it was laughed at and ridiculed, all are deserved of the honour and respect, and in many ways a monument to their strength of feeling and patriotism, but also belief in the democratic values of this nation. And I applaud them. I'm sorry I had to leave them, because within the camps of UKIP's nominated officials in the back office and elected officials, the same greed and selfishness that infects the vast majority of establishment politicians infected a minority of UKIP politicians who used it for their own ends and just could not see the wood for the trees, and helped really bring it down. It enabled Nigel to be able to find a way to move on to other things, but they brought it down themselves. And in doing so, they damaged the incredible hard work that was done. And I think those people who supported UKIP, if they've moved on to reform, I hope they're not going to be as disappointed. I do believe they won't be in the same way, actually. I think the professionalism of reform is wholly different. They've removed quite a lot of the bad wood that was there with UKIP, and I long for them to be able to succeed in exceeding the expectations of those people supporting them, because the country needs it. It needs Nigel and Richard Tice and all the other MPs that are there at the moment to keep advancing their game, but expanding across the country, so that legacy of the campaigning nature of our freedom-loving individuals that were there in UKIP and who've moved forward can actually fulfill its hope. And that hope is that, I'm with you, Nick, Brexit has not been achieved. We've got a demi-Brexit, a part Brexit, a part-time Brexit, in that we've left the European Union in the sense of its political institutions, We're not in the Parliament, the Commission, the Council. We're not paying the annual fee, but we're tied by visible regulatory links to them that are still controlling parts of our economy. They're still got the mentality between the never remote moaners who just cannot see a world beyond those controlling us in the European Commission and Council. And they just want to hand over the democratic history to them because of either a hatred of the United States or a hatred of their own people. That's you and I and the working class and those who are now growing to trying to build the reform package. Their hatred of anybody that is not of their class, their ilk, and their view. And it's as in many ways what George Orwell described in A Road to Wigan Pier, when he said that socialists would rather mix with the foreigner than deal with their own working class. That the socialists are all those who are intellectuals but can't stand the working class socialist. They're happy to sit in their own champagne socialism, but when they have to get down to the nitty gritty and help someone who's living in absolute abject poverty in a house, that's kind of distorted, disgruntled, devastated by the poverty that's within that, they don't want to get involved. They really don't. And so
I was going to say then that they look upon the poor working class, as we said before, the word scum, but they look upon and say to themselves, why can't you be more like me? And if I controlled your life instead of you controlling your life, you'd be so much happier because I know so much, I know more things than you. I'm better than you. If I can just control everything in your life, you will be happier. And that's how they treat the working class.
They do, but it's not. It's a division in the working class now, because if you're an immigrant working class who's come over an asylum, we want to just hand you everything. We want to give you a house. We want to give you benefits. We'll get you off and grant you the right to remain, and then you can go to a council and be headed up on the list of getting a council accommodation, which has been worked for by millions of these millions of British people for years who've paid into a system that they can no longer get. And then they'll turn to those who can't get those housing, who can't get the same benefits, and say, well, you're lazy, or why don't you get a job? Or if I take control of your life, just as you said, Neil, I can make it better for you. It's a two-tier benefit system. It's a two-tier nationality system. It's a two-tier socialist system where if you're with us and one of us will help you, and if you're not, we won't. And I always remember it in terms of when it took us about 10 years to get a council house, Nick, and eventually we did. And there were some big issues about it. My mum got involved. And there was one of the lads there, big lad, down in Withington at this stage. And we knew him. And my mum, we had a load of people complaining to the councillor, but he acted as a bother boy to protect the councillor. And we grew up with him. And we said to him, why are you stopping us down in our view to the council? And he went, well, I'm getting paid by them now, look. And I'm a member of the Labour Party. And as long as I'm a member of the Labour Party, I'm well looked after. So if you want to get higher up on the council housing list, join the Labour Party and we'll sort you out. We'll help out our own. That's what Labour's all about. Discrimination, division, and hatred in many ways. And I just can't deal with them at all anymore because I think they are just hypocrites and they're not out there. And I hope that reform can understand the working class views in this country and the lower middle class, because let's be fair now, Nick. What we thought was once working class and on the edge of poverty and struggling each month with your wage packet, that's now spread across not to the lower middle classes, but is actually also touching the middle classes. And that expansion of struggling, the idea that we might not make it to the end of the month, or we can't afford things such as gas, electricity, water, mortgages, and our children can't get a home, that's spread. And it's spread in this country, in a country that's supposedly filled with socialists.
Yeah, well, that's what socialism always does, doesn't it? It always destroys every single country. No one can ever point to a successful socialist government because one's never existed.